Those two pieces may be how you remember me if you remember me from Ybor City. I was part of the scene there. I was really proud and pleased that that last piece, which I first performed back at the Songwriters Forum at the Ritz Theater in Ybor City, when Bob Graham was running for senator. He had already been governor. The first time I performed it, he was in the Ritz Theater when I performed it, but in a different room. Felt like an accomplishment for me. Of course, he did get elected, and my song didn't stop him. Hello, I'm Norman B., and you're tuned to Deviations from the Norm. Rockapella poetry written by me, performing Norman the Devious Deviant. Now, Deviations from the Norm is just somewhere between poem, song, comedy, and erotic. It's worth $1. You'll love it. Imagine musical comedy, street theater, performance art right here, right now, on this very stage with a low, low rainbow discount donation of just nothing. Does anybody have it? Nothing? Okay then, you can pay for everybody. Give me a word and I'll give you a performance with that word in it. That's how I started my act at Arts Alive, which was the performance gallery that Greg Ruiz and I started in Ybor City on 7th Avenue, 8th Avenue at different times. In 7th Avenue we were in the old Arnold's Art Supply building, the same place where you'll later find the Three Birds Bookstore, 7th Avenue. My friend Malcolm Johnson asked me to take part in this, and also my friend David Audette. I'm glad to, because I love Ybor City. Three Birds really carried the mantle there for a while, and I also love the greater cultural, political, spiritual, and artistic movement that it was a part of. I used to live in Ybor House, which is still there in Ybor City. If you know how to find it, and then you look around, you'll find there's Ybor House, and that's where I once lived. And I tried to perform at all the places in the town that I could, everyone that was appropriate for me. At Arts Alive we had an open mic every Friday and Saturday night. I was the MC. I also booked the talent and went to the newspapers to publicize what we were doing. I started having these poetry slams at Three Birds. Now of course the poetry slam is a very offensive thing to poets, but since poets, especially in our culture, were really into offending, then the only thing to do would be to have something offensive to poets, and that's why the poetry slam thing started. And the very first poetry slam that they had at Three Birds, I won. And what I do is kind of multimedia, you know, it's not just poetry, it's a lot of things involved. So they came up with this rule there, the next time I went, no props. And I thought, who's using props here besides me? And then there's another one, was no costumes. Wow, that's and then no comedy. They came up with another rule, no comedy. And I thought, well, gosh, that really narrows it down a lot for me. And then there were no references to God, and so they would narrow it down even further. And then, of course, they finally came out with the rule, no rainbow unicorn bullshit. What? No rainbow unicorn bullshit? And that's okay. So I that's it. I didn't have anything else. I didn't have anything else to offer. That's all I got. A lot of the people that performed there at Three Birds and at Arts Alive also performed at the Beaux-Arts, which was on the other side of the bay in Pinellas Park, and then later in St. Petersburg. The Beaux-Arts, run by Tom Reese, who's no longer with us. This is a memorial. It may be a memorial for many of us who have passed. Mike Moore, the Hectic Eclectic, the poet and songwriter, performed a lot at both places, and so did Skip Harris. I haven't seen Skip for a long time. I know that Mike has passed. Skip and I did shows together both in Florida and here in Massachusetts. I'm sure a lot of you remember him from the old Ybor days. Skip the beach poet. Bill Blakely and Mike Panera were part of the scene there in Ybor in those days, and Bill has passed. Mike Moore, the Hectic Eclectic, and I, along with Bob Brister and Pat Nolan of the American Friends Service Committee, started the St. Pete Alliance for Cannabis Emancipation, which sponsored the first 5 hemp rallies in St. Petersburg. And by the time we had the 5th one, both the St. Petersburg Times and the Tampa Tribune had come out for full legalization of marijuana. So I was really pleased with the work that we did there. Sometimes some good political work has come out of the Ybor personnel. For instance, in Ybor City we started the Citizens for Safe Food, which was the world's first anti-food irradiation organization. Now recently we posted a video to YouTube about food irradiation, and it's been studied in Kansas State University, where it was contrasted with what Lou Dobbs had to say about food irradiation. Important voices were already there in Ybor City before any of the things that I've just mentioned got there. I'm thinking about Richard Ferrara's band, the Zenith Nader, the Reverend Ralph Show and band. Also there was Steve Martin Carl of the Left Bank, who had been the one that recorded Walk Away Renee. And my close friend Lewis Clark, who was with Blues Image, the band that did Ride Captain Ride. Ybor was a vibrant artistic culture. There were a lot of musicians there were a lot of poets, there were a lot of visual artists, actors, and film artists, filmmakers, photographers. Tom Reese's Beaux-Arts, which was always non-commercial. Tom never made any money off of it and didn't charge any money for it. It was one of the first beatnik coffee houses in 1950, and he kept it going. How could that go for 50 years? It was definitely the last one and the longest lasting one. But as I said, he never took any money for it, and it really was great for the artistic scene. Besides being the first place that I performed, it was the first place that Jim Morrison ever performed and the last place that Jack Kerouac ever performed. Another great place in St. Petersburg from my days there was Guy Hoagland's poetry reading on Central Avenue, near where the Beaux-Arts ended up. Those of us who were at both places, they were often called Yborhemians or Beaux-Arts-hemians. In Ybor, the Three Birds, and over at the Beaux-Arts, the Yborhemian scene and the Beaux-Arts-hemian scene were covered by Malcolm Johnson's poetry magazine. And it's always a big part of this scene was bringing the artists together, noticing how visual art and theater and filmmaking all relate to poetry and music, how these things are all intertwined, how they're all part of the same spirit, and how meeting the other people that are doing creative things spurred us on. At Arts Alive, I think of the visual artists that were there, Ralph Diaz, the painter, and Karen Rodewald, the photographer. So many others. I can't name them all. They were great musicians and great poets and very experimental, cutting-edge things, as Ybor City has become known for. And that's one of the things that still inspires me about it today, and it makes me feel good to think about it and talk about it right now.